Welcome ladies and gentlemen, I am SocioPsycho and this is Mob Reviews, and today we're going to look at Ninja Pizza Girl by Disparity Games, available for PC, Mac, and Linux. How well does it manage to pull off what it's intending to as a speedrun platformer? And that's what we'll dive into here today. And we'll begin in the options menu. In the graphic quality, you do have a wide berth of screen resolutions, which is appreciated, as the game's been running at 60 frames per second with no tearing, clipping, or crashing. There has been some glare issues, but we'll cover that in gameplay. Otherwise, the performance aspect of the game has been going off rather well. You do have VSync and MSAA. In audio, you have all the different sound sliders split up on exactly that, and that is appreciative. The music in the game is decent. It is a speedrun platformer game, and while it is okay, it doesn't have that intensity that you would think of in a normal speedrun category, a high-paced volume of music that really helps propel the atmosphere of a world in an element of urgency and haste. Doesn't have that high beat tempo, reactionary, things are getting intense. For the controls, you simply have Xbox controller and PS4 as well as keyboard. The keyboard is not rebindable, as you can see here. It is slightly annoying in that regard. I have found some keys which I would have liked to rebind for my own personal use, so if that's an issue, then you can obviously forego this game. Now, what I do like about this is that they have a customization of difficulty. As you can see in the difficulty slider, you have the bullying, which is just enemy ninjas which want to stop you, the amount and the intensity of them, the game speed, and the time pressure that you have. These can be organized automatically for you based on the given difficulty bar, which adjusts those accordingly to your personal preference, as there are 5 tiers of difficulty within this section. I do like that they have that, as having a difficulty option in the game is actually quite nice, because not everybody will have the same skill level. It opens it up more to more people. What I don't like though is when we jump into the game here, you can see some of the levels in this chapter, and while it has the name, the grade of completion that you have accomplished due to your time through the game, it also has recyclable items, which we'll go into in a moment, and also collectibles. Now, depending on your difficulty level, it does not change in variation to the skill that you're currently playing as. So if you're playing it on the easiest setting, while the time will be different, it doesn't separate the grade mark and preference of class of difficulty into another category, meaning that if you play it on the easiest, you'll still get the same screen that you would playing it on the hardest. So there's no progression of accomplishment in that regard. While you continue, you don't feel like you can personally grow as a player because it's not a separate save file or interface. So if you play it on the easiest settings and figure, hey, that's too easy, I'm going to bump it up a level, and try to start through it again in a different progression, you're still going to have your old scores there, and so it's not really a sense of, well, okay, I can do it A on easy tier 1, but I only get B on tier 2, being the difficulty that you selected. Is it a big deal? No, but it is slightly annoying. Now, the first thing we're going to talk about is rewards. As you progress through the game, there are rewards, collectibles in the different missions. When you collect these, it sort of acts as currency, and you can go and change clothing by purchasing, as you can see, the 24 is the collectible, recyclable items, and how much the different outfits will cost. So I do like that they tie some of the replayability and scavenging elements in the game to the purchasing of items or clothing that doesn't really take anything away from the game and adds a little level of completion. Now, I'm not exactly sure what the deal with these items are, the morale increasing elements. I haven't really understood these, but as a completionist or a reason to get them, they're there. It's really just a reason to spend the recyclable item currency collectibles that you get throughout the missions. You also have some game crazy modes such as big head mode, which will be obvious, double jump, motivational mode, I'm not exactly sure what that does, and first person mode, which is actually third person. It's not all that amazing. But that's why the game craziness, extra things you can turn on and off, not anything that's really heavily prevalent to the actual play style of the game. So now that we've gone over the rewards and the options that you have within the game, what we're going to talk about briefly is the story of the game. The game's story is actually rather simplistic. The story is where you play as a young female character delivering pizzas for her father, and during these adventures, the different missions or deliveries, you have beginning of the mission a little quote that is enjoyable to see in the very beginning. The story progresses as you a sort of ninja pizza delivery girl, just like the title of the game. It's very forthright in what it has. The story is not overly prevalent within the game, but it does convey the meaning and purpose. What's confusing about the game is the underlying tones of bullying. The game supposedly has a attempt at combating or at least bringing attention to a bullying sense. The enemies will bully you as well when they knock you down. They'll laugh at you or mock you, call you a dork, and the story kind of pertains in the same manner of bullyingness. But the character you play as is not very smart. She's not a character that's going to be very intrinsic in understanding these concepts. She more or less doesn't really understand the nature of the world, rather than being able to point out the inequalities that the game throws at you. This leaves the game with trying to have a very light-hearted gameplay atmosphere with a more serious story topic, but put in a light comedic sense of a story. And while that may tie together well for some people, it really just falls into the equivalence of a B-rated movie. Most of the story is told through cutscenes, which aren't really all that impressive, and unfortunately, the cutscenes are all done in a comic book manner which are predetermined, so any items or clothing that you have worn or purchased to make your character look cool, that's not what you're going to see in the cutscenes. So let's get to the meat of the game, the platforming and speedrun qualities of the game. And I will state that the quality of the game, the speedrun mentality, is actually done fairly well. The getting from point A to point B through obstacles and environmental blockades really do prevent you from easily one-time shotting it. There is a curve of learning, there is a ease of access, and it's fairly easy to get the handle of it. There's a sense of platforming and parkour and speedrun within the game itself, and it ties together in a nice mechanical way. I believe what hurts this game the most, and it could just be my own personal situation due to my eyes or how I perceive the environment, but my main issue that I have with the mechanics of the game is the lighting of the game. There is so much streaking within the game. It is the equivalent of driving at night with a multitude of cars coming at you with high beams on. Because there's such a emphasis on your environmental jump locations through the city, and the background of the city itself with its lights and buildings contradicts the shadows and elements within the front. It's hard to be able to see a shadow and see the platform within that shadow when you continuously have a light shined in your eyes. It really comes down to the screen being too busy, more or less. It's not that there's a bunch of moving parts throughout the game or the mission, but rather that there is just too many lights, as if you're in a rave or a disco at times. Propelling through the mission, it is hard to actually see where you need to go, and while repetition and skill can minimize this effect, I personally had a headache after playing this game. The speed element of the game is pretty straightforward, and while I may not like the font and colorization that they used, especially in the letter grade system presentation at the end of a mission, those are more personal opinions, and I think one reason why I didn't like those is because by that time, all the light shining in my eyes gave me a headache. There are some cool moves and some cool drops where you fall from high qualities but you just tuck and roll, where you jump off of walls and jump off of trampolines and do some slide dives and high kicks. And while the mechanics of the game are sound, while the speed element and movement of the game are sound, it's really the atmosphere of the world that limits your playtime through the game. So at the end of the day, if the visualization of the game itself does not hurt your eyes or make you understand what I'm talking about as a shadow light, a continuational flux never allowing your eyes to adjust, then I would say or recommend this game. The mechanical elements of it are decent. The story, in my opinion, is rather bad. It tries to be serious in a very light-hearted environment, from a story element of a heavy subject matter of bullying in a very comedic fashion. It is too many contradictions in presentation that really hurts them. There are options and rewards which tie the world and your progression together, so you do feel as if the game is respecting your time via the progression and collectibles you've attained. If you do enjoy the game, you'll be able to get some replayability out of it, collect the majority of the items, if not all of them, and have even Steam achievements. This is a game which has a very high rating on Steam, and it may not actually deserve that rating. It doesn't mean the game is bad, and I fall into some categories of the same as other reviewers perhaps, in stating that the game isn't bad, but it's not good. And the difference is just because it has some qualities doesn't mean that it gets a positive review. The game steps over itself and it trips, and instead of allowing the player to enjoy the mechanical aspects of the platforming and parkour elements, it continuously berades you with a light show, and music and a tempo which never truly keeps up to a pace that it sets for itself. So yes, if you enjoy these styles of games and this one does not hurt your eyes, then by all means get it on sale. It is worth it in that regard on sale. But for everybody else who expects a certain level of quality, whether it be storytelling or it be your mechanics and atmosphere fitting in hand and not to hurt the player in any way, then do not pick this game up. I cannot, in good conscience, recommend this game. It's not because I didn't enjoy the elements of the game, but simply because the overall quality of the game was done poorly. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been SocioPsycho. This has been Mob Reviews. I hope this has been helpful to you, and this, unfortunately, is one I cannot recommend, even though it has some good elements in it. I'll see you next time.